Katie Schide here in Silverton ahead of your first Hardrock 100. How are you doing at long last? It's great to see you here in town.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. Pretty scared also. Maybe the most scared I've been for a race in a while. So that's exciting. And yeah, it's cool to be back in the US this summer.
What's the fear specifically? Is it just the monstrosity of the course, just all the 100 miles that you're going to have to cover? What is it that scares you about Hardrock?
I think it's a mix of how kind of big and how many moving pieces there are for the race. Yeah. And then just, all the unknowns of not, I don't have my systems dialed for this race. I don't know which long sleeve I need, I'm stressing about things that don't need to be stressed about. Yeah. But yeah, just all the altitude, there's so many parts of this race that are so different. And, it's definitely a course that deserves a little bit of fear attached to it. So yeah, I think so.
Just being back out here again, I'm like, wow, this race is different than everything else. And you kind of have to be here in order to put your feet on the trail in order to appreciate it. But of course we'll talk more about it, but maybe before we get into Hardrock, I'd love to have you maybe just talk about the last couple of years of your life. It feels like it's been just a really, special moment, and it's really hard to step back and reflect a lot, but you've sort of just had so much momentum and stuff. So maybe just starting with a macro reflection about where you are now and what the last couple of years have felt like in the shoes of Katie Schide.
Yeah, I think, even just this morning I ran into Emily Hoggood on the trail, and we were talking about UTMB 2021. And I was like, that was already my second UTMB. And I think there was just a lot of steps, small steps that were happening that it was, maybe only myself and Germain really noticed. And it was really just things going on in the background. And there's tons of athletes out there going through that right now that we're not paying attention to at all, who are making huge steps personally that we don't really see reflected anywhere. And I think there was a lot of that until it finally clicked over the edge, where I had this big performance that not only the French media noticed, but the American media, the more international media noticed. Obviously that was UTMB 22. And that kind of kicked off the golden ticket for Western States, and then coming back to Western States, coming back to UTMB. And yeah, for me, it's just been this slow, steady, small step progression each year. Yeah. I think maybe I can see how it looks different externally, but for me, it really hasn't. There's been nothing crazy happening. It's really just every year I'm okay, cool, a little bit more.
That's actually a really interesting point. And I wasn't planning to ask you to talk about Western States, but if you look at Caleb Olson and Abby Hall, it's a perfect example of people who've been doing a lot of hard work behind the scenes, who've slowly and steadily been progressing and having good performances, and then bang, these huge international breakthroughs. You can speak about them, but in general, I don't know if there was any thoughts from Western States. Of course, you're the 2024 champion. I'm sure your fans would love the analysis to the extent you paid attention or want to share.
Yeah, for sure. Those are two great examples. They've both, if you've been following either of them, they've both been working super hard in the background. I actually remember meeting Caleb when he was crewing for Finn at Cocodona in 2023. Yeah, when I was there getting ready for, was that last year when Finn? It was last year. It was last year. Yeah. Okay, last year. And I was like, oh, nice to meet you, this guy named Caleb. And then Gran Canaria, even his debut at Western States last year was amazing. And yeah, you follow those athletes and you see there's actually been a lot in the buildup. Obviously, I know Abby even more personally, so I won't talk too much about her because I could go on forever. But those weren't surprising names to see at the front of the race. And there's others who maybe didn't even finish who are also in this step progression, but maybe it just didn't click on that one day, and it will eventually, and we'll all be amazed. So.
Cool. Well, fun way to start, but maybe coming back and talking about your season. You started at MadiRaa again this year, won, and what seemed like a really fast time though on a different course. Maybe just tell us a little bit about that performance, that race, how it set you up for Hardrock.
Yeah, I went into MadiRaa as kind of like just a little test, gear test before Hardrock. Obviously, we are back with on running this year. And I just wanted to make sure I was like 100% comfortable in the shoes, which I am and was before the race, but it was just like a last verification of everything. Mm-hmm. And I also just love that race. So we were both really happy to be there again. It was a really wet, cold day. So I'm not sure. It's hard to like compare to use it as like a direct comparison, but it was at least a good like little boost just to be like, okay, I'm on the right track. That I basically ran almost the entire thing alone. So I kind of wish I had a little bit more experience in the field around me just to like have more gauge of like where I was doing well and where I maybe needed to work a little bit more. But, you don't get
it's interesting because that
else.
might actually be a perfect prep for Hardrock too, because oftentimes here there's just like these massive gaps between runners, and I'm sure you'll be mixing it up at the very front of the race yourself, sort of like you were at MadiRaa also. But yeah, maybe that's a perfect preparation. So you and Germain arrived in the US like 8 weeks ago at this point?
Yeah, mid-May. Yeah.
Mid-May. So tell us a little bit about the calculus, the thought process of like when to arrive, and share a little bit about what you guys have been up to for the last couple months.
So following MadiRaa, we basically wanted to get here as soon as we could. That made sense with our other like life schedules. Luckily, this is our job. This is our life. And we both have the freedom to travel. So we didn't really have much restriction on that other than like, how long do we want to be away from home? And we were both excited to like see new places. I've never been to the San Juans either. So although Germain has a bit more like of this new American experience, it's also a new place for me. I had no idea there was like a whole Jeep season here. I learned what a side-by-side was. East Coast, we're more on like the four-wheelers.
All right. You're becoming American again.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
But I feel like this is really a local like ATV culture, because our ATV culture on the East Coast is a little different.
Okay.
But so we wanted to like really feel like we knew this place, like when we finished the race or didn't finish the race, or no matter what happened, we wanted to feel like we really like connected to the area and understood the area, and could go home feeling like we actually experienced a new place. We didn't just like check in, run on the course, and leave. Yeah.
So tell us about the pole incident and how it set you back, how it impacted the final training block. Because what you posted about it was just sort of like, more or less trying to like keep things transparent about like what pro athletes go through when they're in the meat of like this really important focused training block, and what seemed like a fairly serious setback occurred. So tell us a little bit about what happened and how you dealt with it practically.
So I guess the third or fourth day we arrived in Hilary, I was just out on a long run, and a few hours in just caught my toe and took a really stupid fall and, cut my knee. I luckily was very close to the road and wasn't like bleeding out enormously. My main issue is that I get really queasy when I see blood and things. So I was like taking gels in order to not pass out on the side of the trail. But it basically was like something that was very intense in the moment. I did have some stitches. I didn't watch, so I have no idea how many. I think I want to be, I have this, I have a bit of like, I want to be as transparent as possible, because I feel like it's something I missed when I was a younger athlete, like seeing what people are actually doing instead of just like this interview where I could tell you anything.
Yeah.
Like, what are people doing on a daily basis? Like, how do they feel? Like, are they taking time off? Are they running a ton? I don't know. But there's also, and I think I shared a lot of that in the last few years. And I think recently I've kind of been a bit, because I am more like, I do have more like media presence, more people are asking me for things. I do need to keep some things for myself in order to just like feel like I have total ownership over what I'm doing. So I'm trying to find a good balance there. So I feel like just sharing that was like, hey, just so you know, I'm not going to be running for the next, like, I didn't run for 5 days in the middle of, while Germain was doing, our biggest training of the year. And that's really hard. And I didn't want it to I didn't want to sugarcoat it, you know, like I was really sad. I don't want to pretend I was just like, oh, I'm going to be fine. Like I was really sad. And, I got some stuff done. I helped crew Germain on some long runs. I got my hair cut. Went to Walmart, but
you said you were sitting around a little bit, and I said, hey, if you need a sitting coach, you got to hit me up because I'm a professional sitter.
Yeah.
So hopefully you don't have to take me up on that offer anytime in the future. But thanks for sharing. I do think it is relatable, and I think a lot of people at home are thinking like 5 days, come on, it's not that big in the grand scheme of a training block. But you were just saying before we recorded that it in some way impacted the preparation, at least like what you were insinuating is that you did just like more volume, not a lot of intensity. Of course, Hardrock's not really a race that requires you to do a lot of VO2 max work or whatever, but did it impact like the final training block, or like, is there anything about the last couple of weeks of training that, you know, you had to sort of like keep the knee in mind or baby it in any way that might impact the race?
I think there's two things. One, it actually maybe even gave me a confidence boost, because when I came back from those like 5 days off and then kind of a slower week after that, I felt really good on my next long runs because I was like very well rested. Yeah. And prior to that, I was starting to get frustrated, like, oh, wow, this is so slow, like this altitude and just different types of running than my last 2 years of Western States training. So in that way, it made me feel a lot better because I was like, okay, I feel okay at this altitude now. I don't want to say I feel really good. Everyone feels slow, but better than before. And, but then, it mentally affected me more than I thought it would, because I used to always see people like falling or hear of people falling and hurting themselves and thinking like, that's not me. Like I never fall. I'm good at going downhill. And then suddenly I'm the one like in the medical center. And then I ended up falling again on the same leg a few weeks later, which then shook me up even more. So yeah, the downhills have not been the thing that I feel super confident on. I would say I don't think it's actually affected how fast I'm going. It's just more, there's like some ongoing stress. And, but yeah, I've luckily had like Abby Hall, Marianne Hogan have been like really nice about telling me that, you know, they both had traumatic injuries running downhill, and
both on the podium 2 weeks ago.
two past broken legs on the podium. And they were like, it'll come back. Don't worry. Just let it like go on its own. So
it's funny. I'm remembering now when I had my little tour of duty with Hardrock back in the day, and I was like downloading all the like veteran knowledge. Somebody told me, or I heard somewhere, I can't remember exactly where, that like just take all the downhills easy, because like no matter what, even if you're losing time on the downhills, there's so much going uphill where you can actually make up the big margins. And I feel like that actually is like a really good secret to Hardrock. So
but yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, you really can't go down that fast in most places because it's just too technical.
So you just said from what I've seen. So to me, like as a fan of yours and as an observer, it's like, okay, what are the big variables for Katie to like have a Katie race here? It's like the altitude. Okay, you've been here for a long time, and then course knowledge. And the thing that's different about Hardrock as it compares to a lot of the other 100 milers you've done, Western States, UTMB, Diagonal Day Foo, et cetera, is that it's not really all that well marked and you're like really far out there. So course knowledge is really important. So the two variables, altitude, course knowledge, maybe you could say a few words on both.
Yeah, altitude is it's definitely a big concern, or a big point to consider, obviously. That's why we came early. I think we did all we could coming as early as we did. I do live actually higher than most people do in the Alps. We live at 1,500 meters, which is like the same altitude as Salt Lake City, which isn't considered that high here, but it's higher than most places in the Alps. So yeah, and then it's also just admitting that a lot of altitude, your reaction to altitude is purely genetic and you have no control over it. Mm-hmm. So you kind of just have to take what you get. Between you and I, or Germain and I, like it can be completely different, and it has nothing to do with how fit you are. Yeah. Obviously fitness helps push that a little bit, but there's a point where you don't get to choose what your reaction is. Yeah. So for me, it's going to be about being patient with that, and hopefully not doing any, like, I think I need to be more careful with my decision making, because the end is the hardest part. at least in this direction.
Yes.
So
Confirm.
Yeah. So I'm going to be more focused on like trying to be fresh for the end, at least just mentally, because it's a lot more technical at the end. And then what was the other course?
How much time have you spent on the course?
So we stayed in Hilary for a month, and we thought, oh, we'll have plenty of time to see the race. Everyone said it's a low snow year. Turns out it wasn't as low of a snow year up high as people thought.
And I think it's just not been that warm of a late spring, early summer.
Yeah, when we got to Hilary, it was still snowing up high. So that was the end of May.
Yeah.
So it didn't melt out that fast. Camp Bird was closed to the first gate when we were there until for like 2 or 3 weeks. So we could only run the first like 7K. Sorry, I don't know how many miles that is of Camp Bird. And then Bear Creek Trail has been closed on weekdays, so we could only go up there on the weekends. And then because of my knee, that like took out a whole nother weekend cycle. So I actually only got up there like twice, I think. And then the rest of the course we saw in like kind of ping pong out and backs.
Yeah. So you didn't do like the full soft rock like a lot of people do?
No, yeah. It was just like too many logistics and snow, and we were like, let's just do it as we can. And it's kind of I feel like it's more the theme of the race is like kind of going in like, let's see what happens. So I think I've seen with my eyes all of the course, because we would go up to the snow line or, you know, a little bit into the snow and say, okay, well, then it continues up there. But we didn't actually like walk up there, like Grant Swamp. Yeah, there's like a few sections I haven't been on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good to save something for the end, but you just sort of reminded me of something I think would be interesting to talk about too. And maybe a question better to ask after the race, but we're like 48 hours removed from Hardrock, less than that at this point, and town is still totally quiet. And so I'd just love to have you talk about just Hardrock and the experience of the race to the extent you can, like based on the fact that you haven't even started the event yet, but comparing it to like a UTMB where all week it's like wall to wall, nonstop energy in the valley. You know, Diagonal des Fous is also chaotic. Western States is a small race, but bigger than this, right? So it is a bit of a contrast, even though it has this legend and legacy and history to it. Any comments about like just the vibe and the experience of Hardrock so far?
You know what? At other events, I usually try to remove myself from the center of everything. So, like, I actually don't. I mean, of course, UTMB.
But this is a race where you could probably walk through Silverton and not everybody who would know who you are. Where at UTMB and Western States Reunion, probably you couldn't do that. Silverton's a little bit different. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are asking for selfies, but
no, actually, no, that's true. It is interesting to be like real. I mean, we're staying like blocks away from the start finish, and I can like run down the road. And I mean, I only ran into Emily today, for example, because I was on the race course. I would say, I think the funny thing about here is that there's more people here who are not racing, which is a good reminder of how lucky we are.
So much better. So much better.
But it's also kind of sad because everyone's doing like all these fun things and we're like, okay, we're just going to stay in our house and like count our gels. But
shout out Never Second.
Yeah.
Also good at making sure you don't get queasy when you split your knee open, in addition to fueling you on the 100-mile.
Yeah. They got me to the medical center. But so I think that's the more interesting point, is just like all these people around who are not racing, which brings kind of this, I almost feel like there's this summer camp happening and I don't really get to be part of it. Yeah. So it would be fun to come back and not race maybe sometime and be around. But it is, I think the unique thing is also that there's only a few of us who get to do this, right? Yeah. So it's something to keep in mind also. Like I ran into a guy outside of Hilary a few weeks ago training, and he said he had been waiting 15 years to be to have a bib, and I was like, wow, I feel so uncomfortable because I didn't ever put my name in the lottery. So I really need to cherish this opportunity.
That's a really good point. I'm glad you have that presence of mind about it. So a couple more things before we wind down. One of the races within the race, USA versus France. What team are you on? We need to know.
It's a great question. So there's a few different teams in this race. There's, all of France, of course. Then there's Zach And then Katerina and I actually both did our PhDs across the street from each other in Zurich.
Okay.
So there's also
academic rivalry. Okay.
There's same institution.
Okay,
So there's
right.
also our. I also think the funny thing is that she's Katerina Hartmuth, and my middle name is my mom's last name, which is Hart, and so I'm actually Catherine Hart. So I really feel like we have this like dual life going on. So
Amazing.
Yeah, we've got this like ETH Zurich partnership, and then the Frenchies. So I'm not sure, but there's going to be a lot of French spoken out there on the course, and I'm glad I'll understand. We were thinking to give Zach a little
and then Zach
French lesson before.
No. He's going to be speaking with like a Pennsylvania, like Yinzer accent to counteract all the French he's out on the course this weekend. One thing that's less of a question, more of a comment that I would love for you to, maybe share a little bit about to the extent you want to, but to embarrass you a little bit as a fan of the sport, right? Do you know about like in golf and tennis, what they call the career Grand Slams? So for example, like Rory McIlroy won the Masters in the spring, which means he won all 4 of the majors in golf. So if you take that analog for trail running and the 100-mile races, Western States, UTMB, Diagonal des Fous, Hardrock, you've won the first 3, and this is your first time at Hardrock. This is not an official thing like the majors are in tennis and golf, but I don't know. I think it's an interesting storyline going into the weekend. Do you care to comment on the career Grand Slam, what it would mean to you to potentially be able to pull it off? And we should say the only 2 people who have won all 4 are Courtney Dauwalter and Kilian Jornet.
I am aware of this.
Yes.
I won't pretend it's new information. Highly aware of this like Grand Slam, even though it's not the official like American ultra running Grand Slam thing.
Yeah.
But I think it's definitely something I've known about for a while, and I always thought like, wow, this is. I guess it was when Courtney came to Diagonal des Fous in 2023. Was it? No, 2. Yeah, when she won in 2022, that she completed. She was the first person besides Kilian to win every race of the 4. And I just thought like, wow, that really shows her versatility. Obviously, Kilian's versatility. We don't even need to go into his like Sierzing Alzagama, which is even a whole nother level of versatility. But yeah, it was something I thought like, wow, that's really a huge goal. Like that's not just like, I want to do well at this race, that's like a many-year timeline, multi-year timeline goal. And for sure something I had in my mind, like, but you still have to be focused on each race individually because you can't do it without each race. So that is obviously something I'm aware of, but the race itself is my main goal here. And getting to the end feeling good, no tears like at the end of Diagonal des Fous. I would like to like finish feeling like I gave it a good effort and that I kind of executed calmly and with patience. And also just like enjoy this place because it is really special compared to, I don't want to like diss any other races, but this is like pretty extra special.
Yeah. Awesome. Maybe final thing then. You're back in the US now racing, and it's great to have you here. Of course, you live in France. I'd be curious to hear who's on the team for Friday into Saturday morning. Like, I'm sure you probably have pacers. I'm pacing Germain personally, so if I can keep up, but I'm sure the audience would be curious to hear who's on Team Katie this weekend.
Yeah, I got a big team. Well, my parents are here. But my like aid station logistics will be run by Meredith Terranova, who crewed me at UTMB last year.
Nice.
And then my sister will be there too. She's been at the last 2 Western states, so she knows the drill. Let's see. And then for pacers, Abby and Cordis also will be helping with crewing. Cordis will be pacing Charmant, but he can talk about that later.
Yep.
And let's see, for pacers, I have Eric Sorensen, who's a Ure local.
Right. He's a friend of ours.
Oh, okay,
All
cool.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I actually...
Papa Eric. Yeah.
Yes.
Father of 3.
Yes.
Melissa are friends of
Side
ours.
story on Papa Eric is Germain was like mapping routes on Strava or something when we were first getting to Ouray, and he realized this guy has like every single Strava segment in the entire area, but we didn't know who it was. Then my first jog on Camp Bird Road, shuffling along after my knee incident, I run into him and chat with him in the middle of my run for like 10 minutes. And so it just felt right that he be there for Camp Bird Road. So he's going to do Ouray to Telluride with me.
He's a great guy. Really good athlete too.
Yeah. He made us some great pizza one night too.
Okay, there you go.
Oh, and his espresso machine. Yeah. If you need like an espresso or pizza stop, you got to hit him up.
I'm gonna hit one of those before I take Germain up Camp Bird Road.
I'm sure he could make you one. And then after Telluride, I'll have Cody Lind to the end.
Amazing team.
So that's the team.
Cool.
There's other people too that I'm not naming, obviously, who will be around, but that's like the primary characters.
Well, Katie, it's great to see you here in Silverton. I know this has been a multi-year dream of yours to do Hardrock, and I will be out and around the course all day, and I just can't wait to see you have your opportunity to race here. So good luck on Friday.
And I think I have to thank you for being kind of the little spark that got me a picks after Western States last year. So thanks.
Yeah, happy to help. Thanks for coming in, Katie. Good luck.
Great. Thanks.